Whenever we talk about the rights of women, before the coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Jahiliyyah, there were no rights of women, unfortunately. They didn't have any rights. Not in the dignity, not in nobility, not in the rights of marriage, not in the rights of inheritance, not even in the rights of how to be dressed publicly. They were forced to wear immodest clothes in public. They were reduced to lower than human beings. And unfortunately, not just the Islamic world or not just the Arab world, the entire world at that time, they didn't have any respect for the women. They didn't give them any form of respect. They didn't give them any form of rights. And I can assure you that if you look up the discussions of the Catholic Church during that period of time, I can assure you that they were not very pleasant. But at the same time, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, one thing that we have to be very, very, very careful in this discussion, and one thing that we have to be very careful of not doing, is making the same mistake of empowering ourselves by going outside of the religion. And in reality, humiliating ourselves. This is the biggest fear that I have in this discussion. That in order to empower ourselves, in order to say that I have that kind of right and I have that kind of responsibility, we go outside of our religion. We compare ourselves with other people, we compare our religion with other religion, and we go outside of our religion, and in reality we only humiliate ourselves. I remember the saying of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu when he took over Baytul Maqdis, and he was going into Baytul Maqdis. And this was a historical moment in Islamic history. This was the first time when a Khalifa, a Muslim Khalifa, took over Baytul Maqdis. And he was entering Baytul Maqdis and he said, نَحْنُ قَوْمٌ أَعَزَّنَ اللَّهُ بِالْإِسْلَامِ فَإِذَا ذَهَبْنَا نَبْتَعِ الْعِزَّةَ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ أَذَلَّنَا اللَّهُ. We are a nation that we seek respect, dignity, empowerment through Islam. And whenever we seek all of these things, anything other than this, other than Islam, this is the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala humiliates us. This is the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala disgraces us. So my biggest fear is that today inshallah we are going to talk about the empowerment of women. But we have to be very careful that we don't make the same mistake that people of the past made. We are not supposed to go outside of our religion to say or to prove that we are that much empowered. Because if we do that, according to the saying of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, we are not empowering ourselves. In reality, we are humiliating ourselves. So for example, a woman coming into the masjid or a woman being a part of the community is not the same as a woman leading a salah in the masjid. It's not same. They are two completely separate issues. And my biggest fear is that there are two extremes discussing this issue. Two extremes. So you have a non-Islam being discussed here, and then you have a non-Islam being discussed here, and Islam is lost in the middle. So that's why it's very important that people like me, who are the students of knowledge, who are speakers, who are Imam, who are du'at, it's very important that they discuss these issues in Jummah khutbahs, in these lectures. We try to sort out these issues according to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when you look at the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what you realize is that women were empowered through the same things that are used as symbols of oppression today. In the time of Rasulullah, let me repeat myself again. In the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, women were empowered through the same things that are used as symbols of oppression today. So for example, hijab. Hijab was an empowerment towards women. And one of the things I remember my teacher telling me, or telling our class, is that you will not find even a single woman complaining about hijab when it was legislated in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are many hadiths that represent women being afraid of some of the rulings of Islam initially when they came down. They heard their husband saying something, and they got confused, and they got scared. They were not sure about that hadith. So they went to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to confirm the context of that hadith. And then Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam consoled them. Prophet ﷺ told them the context about that revelation or about that ruling, and then they were satisfied. But in the case of hijab, I challenge you, you will not find even a single narration of a woman coming to Rasulullah ﷺ and saying to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, what is this whole deal about hijab? We don't want to wear hijab. Because the women in the time of Rasulullah ﷺ, they did not understand it as a means of oppression. They understood it as a means of empowerment. And it's so ironical that today we take it as a symbol of oppression. Even though in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the biggest example that we have is the example of our mother Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha. And Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha, she never felt weighed down because of her hijab. She never. She was confident. And all of the great women in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you look at those examples. Not only in the time of Rasulullah, even after the time of Rasulullah. You look at tabi'at, you look at tabi'at, and you will realize something very, very interesting that we need to know as believers today. We need to know this as believers today, especially when we have an agenda. And you know, this is a problem. When men have an agenda, and when the women have an agenda. Let me give you an example. You will see many men today quoting Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha as saying, and this is an authentic narration, there is no doubt about it, this is an authentic narration, that Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha said that if Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw the way women were today, he would not allow them to go to the masjid. This is an authentic narration. Now the men today, obviously, they will use it to say that women should not go to the masjid, right? And at the same time, you will find sisters saying that, you know, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she was the most eloquent speaker, which is absolutely right. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was the most eloquent speaker of all the Sahaba. And this is not my testimony. This is the testimony of Urwa ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He said, I have seen all the speeches of Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman and Ali, and none of them were as eloquent as the speech of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. So of course Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was the most eloquent speaker. But what are we trying to justify through that? It is established, no doubt, that women can speak in public. They can lecture, men and women both. Why? Because Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha did that. But the question is, how was she dressed when she was doing it? Isn't that relevant in this discussion? How was she dressed? You know, so you find two different people arguing about two different aspects of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, which is a contradiction. And when Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha made this statement that if Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw the women today, he would not allow them to go to the masjid. When she made that statement, did she make that statement to warn women? Or did she make that statement to tell men to stop their women from going to the masjid? You tell me. She made that statement, clearly she made that statement to warn women, because after making that statement, she never stopped going to the masjid. And she never stopped any women from going to the masjid. So clearly she made that statement to warn women not to go to a masjid in a certain fashion. She is not stopping women from going to the masjid as a whole. But if I have an agenda, if I have an agenda to stop women from coming to the masjid, I will argue using the same hadith of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha out of the context, because I have an agenda. And when someone says that Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, and especially our sisters say that Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was the most eloquent speaker, she was the most amazing person as a speaker, but then at the same time she says that niqab is a bid'ah. Now I'm not going to discuss is niqab fard or mustahab. I know there is a discussion among the fuqaha that whether niqab is fard or mustahab, or it is in between fard or mustahab. But what I'm trying to say is that if I am niqabophobe, if I say that niqab is a bid'ah, but then at the same time I say, wow, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was the most amazing person as a speaker, then there is a contradiction. Because Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha did cover her face. She did cover her face. So how can I argue against one aspect of her character and then at the same time says how amazing she was and how amazing this aspect of her character was? Don't you think it's a munafiqat? Don't you think it's a contradiction? And what we are doing in the whole process, in this entire discussion, what we are doing is that we are doing a disservice to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are doing a disservice to the cause of women empowerment. We are doing a disservice. And what we are missing out in this entire discussion is that even though Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was covered, despite having her face covered, she was the most powerful person. She was the most impactful person in her society. It didn't limit her to lecture men. It didn't limit her to change her society. It didn't limit her to pursue her knowledge. It didn't limit her to becoming a muhadditha, a scholar of hadith. It did not limit her in any sense whatsoever. The modesty of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha did not stop her. And that's my point. There was no contradiction in Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha's speech and modesty. And that's why Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha used to say about the women of Ansar, Ni'man nisa nisa'ul Ansar. That the best of the women are the women of Ansar. Why? لَمْ يَمْنَعْهُنَّ الْحَيَاءَ أَنْ يَتَفَقَّهْنَ فِي الدِّينِ. Because their modesty did not stop them from becoming the scholars of religion. Their haya did not stop them from becoming the scholars of religion. Their clothing did not stop them. Their segregation, that women in one part and the men in another part, it did not stop them. This segregation did not stop them. They understood and realized that they have a role to play. And subhanAllah, if you look at the life of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she always stood for the rights of women. And you know how? She goes out to the janazah of her brother, Abdurrahman ibn Abi Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anha. She goes out to the janazah of her brother. She prayed the janazah and then she goes to the qabristan as well. She goes to the graveyard as well. And some of the male sahaba, some of the male companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said, Aisha, what are you doing here? You cannot do that. And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha said, what do you mean? So they said, don't you know that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam cursed the women who frequently go to the graves? The women who do niyaha and na'ihat. Na'ihat are those women who go to the grave and then purposely they mourn and cry. And subhanAllah, even to this day, surprisingly, sometimes you go to a janazah in some of the part of the Muslim world and you will see na'ihat. Women will go to the graves and purposely they beat themselves up and they wail and they scream. And sometimes they are paid to do this and sometimes it's a tribal thing, it's a family thing. But yes, Prophet ﷺ did curse them. Prophet ﷺ cursed all those women, not just na'ihat. Prophet ﷺ cursed all those women who wail and scream and cry and beat themselves up at the janazah as a whole. Prophet cursed all of them because it hurts the dead. It tortures the dead. And my sisters should listen to this carefully because sisters do this. Unintentionally, but they do this. But Prophet ﷺ cursed all these women. So they said to Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, don't you know that Prophet ﷺ cursed them? And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, subhanAllah, she said something amazing. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha said, yes, but I also know that Prophet ﷺ used to forbid everyone from going to the graveyard. You guys too, men and women both. Do you know for the greater part of Islam, it was haram to go to the graveyard? Unless you are burying a body. That's it. When you have a body to bury in the qabristan, in the graveyard, then you can only go to the graveyard. Otherwise, it was haram for men and women both to go to the qabristan, to go to the graveyard. You know why? Because Prophet ﷺ feared some of the shirk that is taking place in the ummah today. Some of the shirk that is taking place at the graveyard today. Prophet ﷺ feared that Muslims would elevate the graves once again. They would worship the graves once again. They would call out to the occupants of graves once again. So he forbade everyone from going to the Qabristan. It was just towards the end of his life, just 4 years before his demise, 19 years in Islam, and then Prophet ﷺ said, Inni nahaytukum an ziyaratil qubur, that I used to stop you from going to the graveyard, but now I allow you. You should go to the graveyard because it will remind you of death. And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha insisted that this included men and women both. The prohibition is lifted now. And she spoke up, she demanded her right. And she kept going, she continued to go and she continued to participate. And you know, it is a Sunni fiqh discussion. It is a legitimate fiqh discussion. I understand that whether women are allowed to go to the graveyard or not. I understand that there is a discussion among the fuqaha. But what I'm trying to say is that the point here is that no Sahabi said to Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha that she is a feminist. She is a feminist. She is always doing this to us. She is always talking about the women's rights. We are so sick of her talking. No, no one said this. You know why? Because everyone understood that Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was Mu'mineen. She was a scholar in their ranks. She was a scholar, she was an alima. And she has a right to say this. She has a right to demand evidences. She has a right to discuss all of these issues. Just because it's not an accepted practice, just because it was not the norm for the women to go to the graveyard, doesn't mean that it is haram. It doesn't mean that it is haram. So Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha challenged the culture of Sahaba. Can you imagine that? She challenged the culture of Sahaba. So of course the women today, they can challenge the cultures of 21st century from the Muslim world. Especially when we are so far away from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have every right to challenge all these stereotypes. They have every right to challenge all those things. But my personal advice and my request to all of you is that don't bundle it all up together. Don't say that it's all as one. Don't treat it all as one. Because then there is a fear that we may seek this empowerment outside of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then we may lose our religion. So for example, one issue that I keep hearing again and again and again and again. It's a modern issue now, it's a new issue now. A woman leading a salah in the masjid. Mixed congregation. A woman leading men and women in the masjid as an imam. And subhanAllah, today it has become an issue of empowerment. But if you look at Islamic tradition, this issue was solved by Muslim hundreds of years ago. Over 1,000 years ago, this issue was solved. You know how? Because the women in Islam, they achieved positions that were far greater than a guy who leads a prayer in the masjid. And the problem again, once again, is that we are looking to the outside of Islam. That's the problem. In Islam, the person who leads the prayer, the imam of salah, the imam of masjid, he is not equivalent to a priest. He is not equivalent to a rahbai. Women achieved positions in Islam, which was the position of muhaddithah, the scholar of hadith. The scholar of hadith is far greater in rank than a guy who leads the prayer. She has a far greater rank in the sight of the Muslims. Darda radiyallahu ta'ala anha taught some of the Sahabas in the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Some women achieved the position of qadi, being judges, especially in the mazhab of Imam Abu Hanifa. In the school of Imam Abu Hanifa, they are even allowed to become qadiul quddad, chief justice of the Supreme Court, according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah. And the judge, he tells or she tells the imam what to do and what not to do. So subhanallah, the scholar of hadith, the narrator of hadith is of the greatest rank. Imam Zahabi rahmatullah alayhi, he wrote a book, Siyar I'lam al-Nubula, Siyar I'lam al-Nubula, the biographies of the noble people. And he mentioned thousands of Muslim women who were the scholars of hadith. And alhamdulillah, we have a sheikh that we need to have so much respect for. And he lives in Oxford and he writes a book. I'm talking about Sheikh Akram Nadwi rahmatullah, Sheikh Akram Nadwi. And he wrote a book by the name of Al-Muhaddithat. Go and look up for these books. Al-Muhaddithat. It's in English. The female scholars of hadith. And he mentioned thousands of scholars of hadith, female scholars of hadith, who are narrating the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Imam Zahabi rahmatullah alayhi said, listen to this carefully. Imam Zahabi rahmatullah alayhi, he said that there have been many men who were the weak narrators of hadith. Many men. There have been many men who fabricated the hadith, who weakened the hadith. But I have never come across a single female weak narrator of hadith. Can you imagine the power of this statement? I have never come across a single female weak narrator of hadith. So my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, the point is that when women in Islam achieve positions where they were far higher than a guy who leads prayer in the masjid, then why do we have to fight this battle? When clearly this is not an issue of rank. When clearly this is not an issue of women being under a man. And subhanallah, none of the ulama, you will find no alim giving you an example of any woman. Yes, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha led the prayer, but she led the women in the prayer. No women in the past, the great women that we had in the past, no one brought this issue up because this is not an issue. So why are we discussing this issue? Again, the problem is we are looking outside of the deen of Islam. And my sincere advice to all of you brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us something much more greater than that. Then why do we have to do that? Why do we have to look outside of Islam? Why do we have to compare ourselves with other people? We are not in need of that. When 1400 years ago, do you know what women were in Christian church? Do you know what women were in Judaism? Do you know what women were outside the scope of religion in the world? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave men and women empowerment, a means of empowerment. So why do we have to look outside of our religion? And one final request, one final concluding remark. How should we go forward? How can we demand our empowerment as a community of believers? How should we do that? Number one, my dear sisters, ilm, knowledge. We want you to become the scholars of deen. And when I say we, I don't mean we as men, we as an ummah. Your family needs you to become scholars of hadith. Your family needs you to become scholars of knowledge. We need more and more women to become accomplished, to become experts in their areas, to excel in their fields, who can go out and demonstrate that their Islam does not limit them. We need that. We absolutely need that. And you know what else? We need our women to hold us accountable, us men accountable. If we miss our Fajr Salah, if we are not fulfilling our responsibility towards the deen of Allah, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we want our women to hold us accountable. Yes, in a gentle way, because we all need nasiha. All of us, we need nasiha, but we need that. We need our women to become scholars of knowledge, scholars of religion, so that they can demand their rights, so that they can use their knowledge to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has rightfully given them. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she used to speak, I know when I talk about Muslim women empowerment, men don't take interest in it. So that's why today everyone is looking at the clock. Everyone is looking at the clock. One Mulana is going to finish the lecture. So I'm going to take 5 minutes more. But this is an important thing to understand. Don't worry. Take some interest in it as well. When Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she used to speak, everyone used to listen. Everyone used to listen. No one questioned her ilm. No one questioned her credential. Abu Musa al-Ashari radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he used to say when we could not figure out something as male companions, we would go to Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, especially in the matters of inheritance. We would go to Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. And it was not because of her gender. It was not because she was the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was because of her ilm. It was because of her knowledge, because of her credential. We need alimas today. We need scholars of hadith today. And alhamdulillah, I do see that tide is turning. I see more and more instructors in Islamic institutes. I see more and more female speakers. I see more and more du'at. And I see more and more women that are becoming more vocal. But what we have to be very, very careful is that we need to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for us. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has assigned us as men and women both. And you know, when you seek knowledge, it's my request to brothers and sisters both. When you seek knowledge, don't go into technicalities only. It's not helpful when you go only in technicalities in our faith. So for example, a lot of sisters, they come and ask this question: do we have to cook for our men? Do we have to cook for our husbands? And the husbands are not going to like this answer now. They are not. Do we have to cook for our husbands? Technically speaking, the Shari'i, fiqhi answer. Now no one is looking at the clock. Everyone is looking at me now because, mashallah, it's an interesting question. Shari'i, fiqhi answer is no. The books of Usul says, لَيْسَ عَقْدِ النِّكَاحِ كَعَقْدِ الزَّوْجِ لَيْسَ عَقْدِ النِّكَاحِ كَعَقْدِ الْخِدْمَةِ. The contract of marriage is not like a contract of maid. She is not your maid.